Alright, everybody, this is Fernando with the all new Ghost and Spirits Special Edition video. In this case, we're continuing episode 3 of the Ghost Adventures Quarantine Lockdown episodes. There have been a good number of views with my past 2 episodes, so it seems like this is definitely a popular thing. So I'll go ahead and I'll continue it here with episode 3. As always, the way it'll work is we'll watch a segment together and then I'll give it a brief or good analysis as to what we just saw, and then I'll give things a brief pause, maybe about 15-20 seconds, to allow everyone to watch the next segment, and then you come back here and we'll talk about it as well. So, great stuff when it comes to these episodes. They've been doing pretty well when it comes to their content and their entertainment factor. So, let's go ahead and let's talk about episode 3. This one is called The Summoning Experiments. Right when I heard that word, the summoning, in my head I was thinking, oh no, exclamation point. So, the first segment let's talk about now. It looks like it started off with day number 6, and there they are, Zach Baggins, Aaron Goodwin, and then Billy, I think, and then Jay, right in front of the Haunted Museum. So this would be day number 6 now. It doesn't really explain like what happened with the other days. Like I don't think they spent all 5 days doing the other 2 episodes, but who knows, maybe they were just taking a brief break. But it was fascinating that once again they're right in front of the very museum that I love so very much, the one that I've been now to 3 separate times. And so I love just seeing that stuff right there in the front because I was there. I've been there. I know that wagon that's there. I know the entrance involving that patio and involving the covering, and then he was standing in front of the doorway again. Great stuff. I love seeing that. And he was mentioning yet again about the homeless people that populate that location. As I mentioned in episode 2, when I was doing my analysis there, the area that the Haunted Museum is at is a seedy area. It's definitely not a place that you want to be there by yourself, especially late at night. It's just one of those things. It's in a bad part of town, and that's just the way that goes there. So it was not surprising for him to state that there was yet another homeless person right there that was spitting on. I forgot to mention this within my past episode, but when I was with Randy and we were going over to the Haunted Museum the first time, we actually had a homeless person that was almost like staring us down as we were going out from the lift. I think the lift driver was telling him something, like he mouthed something to him, and then the guy actually started to verbally fight back as well. It was crazy stuff. I thought there was almost going to be a fight right there. So not something really you want to do when it comes to, let's say, that part of town. But yeah, again, love seeing the front of the museum there too. And I liked how Zach referred to it as his second home. It makes sense because this is a big place. This is his baby, in other words, outside of Ghost Adventures, and he has been known to be there constantly, except of course when he's filming his own Ghost Adventures episodes, but otherwise he's constantly there throughout the day. People will see him out and about. He usually likes, the way I read it from online and other stories is, if he's there at the museum, he usually likes to just dart around. Like, he's not going to spend much time really talking to fans because he's there to work or to follow up on things associated with the museum. And I imagine so. It's a big museum. There's a lot of widgets and a lot of parts and operations that just have to be manned by him consistently. And so I imagine that he doesn't have too much time to interact with fans. So if you go there to the museum and he is there, like let's say the crew or the employees there state that he does happen to be there, then most likely you'll just see him dart behind the shadows. Although sometimes people state that he does like to surprise people himself. Like he'll be able to come out and say hello, or he'll pretend to be something else like a statue as people walk by, and then people will say, wow, that looks like Zach Baggins, and yep, it's him. Or in some cases I've read that he likes to actually take one part of the tour and be their surprise guest, like their surprise guide. So he'll be able to then lead them and talk about the very next room they're about to go into. How awesome is that? How lucky can you be if you see that? He did mention too in this episode episode that once again he feels the pandemic equals more energy for the household. I still don't know about that part. There's obviously been a lot of other world events that have happened, not just now, but in the past too, while that house has been around. So why haven't those led to more energy? Maybe they have, maybe they haven't, but I don't know. I still don't see the direct link associated with that. I think it's more of the objects that are definitely making things haunted. But let's talk about now the whole point of the episode, when the way he was leading things when he was going into the household. He was saying that feel for a word that I try to avoid as much as possible. Summonings. For me, that is a big no-no. Absolutely nothing I want to do with at all. And I've been invited to several occasions to do something like that on some of the ghost tours that I've been on, and I'm like, nope, 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 nothing involving summonings, no Ouija boards, no witchcraft, no devil's work, nothing like that. Like no artifacts, nothing. To me, that stuff is very dangerous because yes, it can absolutely, in my opinion, open up something that you don't want. And once it's open, then that's it. That stuff is being let through. It's not like a door that you can just shut right away. No, in this case, you're going to have something there that's going to come out, and you're going to have a good chance that there'll be a hard time putting it back. And this stuff has been known to follow people home. So when I hear those words, anything involving summonings, to me, I'm like, nope, I don't want to do anything like that. So let him be the one if he wants to. It'll make definitely some good entertainment value throughout the rest of this episode, so we shall see. Also, I saw this at the front of the location. They had the Haunted Museum van. That must be brand new. I haven't seen that before there. That's the first time that's ever come across. I'm wondering if that's a van that's just used for promotional purposes, because you see that a lot in Vegas. You see a lot of the companies, the big ones, that have these special vehicles that are just adorned with their logo, like it's wrapped around the entire truck or van or billboard type car, and then that way they just ride around all day long throughout Las Vegas because it's free advertising. It's like a great way to just showcase your name or your building's name or your company's name, and then all these tourists will see it. But I'm also wondering at the same time if this is a van that can be used to pick up guests or maybe even leave guests. If it is, I'm hoping that that's something that's available, because how cool would that be? I wonder if that's part of the rest in peace ticket that they're selling now. Like if there's an option there where you could have a specialized pickup in order to make sure that you get dropped off and picked up right there with this cool looking van. I'm going to look into that later on because that looks pretty cool. And then finally they went in, and lo and behold, the very first place that they went to is one of my favorite rooms within the entire Haunted Museum, and that's LEE Shapirow's room. Once again, it looks like in this episode they're avoiding specifically stating a name. And they did that like the other episode involving that celebrity, that nameless celebrity that again that they stated was someone who knew about the house, but they didn't want to state the exact person's name. And again, I think that was either Pamela Anderson or Heather Locklear, since they've mentioned it in the past. Here though, it seems like they are avoiding that room's name as well. Well, for you fans out there, her name is LEE Shapiro. That's her name. That's the name of the room as well. That's LEE Shapiro. She's one of the most mysterious persons there in the museum, like so many other people featured in the museum. You know about their history, you know about their life, where they're born, and all that stuff, like leading up to whatever happened to them that led them to be there in that museum. Like, you know, of course, about Marilyn, like in this case, Manson, and you know about Ed Gein, and then you know about others that are featured there. But here, though, LEE Shapiro, she remains very mysterious, especially with what led up to her demise. I've seen her room now 3 times specifically, and each time I just marvel as what is inside that room. Sure enough, it is littered with a lot of her original writings right there behind a special glass display. And you also get to see those infamous Polaroids that he was referring to in the episode. Those are really spooky. Those are the ones that he's right. The way the tour guide stated was those are apparently the very last few moments before whatever it was that she had accidentally or purposely summoned had come out of her equipment to claim her. Like, she was knee deep in the middle of possession, and in this case, this possession would ultimately end her life. And that final photograph, for whatever reason, being torn in half, is especially scary because, again, you can see something like really, really dark coming up in the background. If you see the photo, if you see the Polaroids one after the other, you'll see that the background starts off pretty light, and then it starts getting darker and darker until the final one. You can see like there's something really back there just absorbing all the light. And so whatever it was that she was messing with, this is serious, serious stuff. And so there, in this case, that particular room, that's what is featured in that equipment room. I was surprised. I've been actually told by another tour guide that that was a recreation of what was found, but it turns out that that's the real equipment. Maybe the tour guide, I don't know, was brand new. Maybe they just accidentally stated the wrong information. But here now, Zach is completely stating that this is the real equipment. That is the real deal. The very same equipment that she was essentially found dead. Like, she was there in the middle of the room, surrounded by this equipment because she was taken or whatever else happened with her based on what she was doing with those with those experiments. So the next time I go there to that museum, I'm going to especially pay close attention to that equipment. In that room, when you walk in there, they do have a recreation of what they thought might have sounded like something's coming through the speakers, something else communicating with her. Very eerie, very creepy stuff that plays through it. So that's really interesting to hear that that was completely real. And the writings and so on that were there within the room, the stuff that looks like it's almost like hieroglyphics or some other type of alien language, that is there within the room as well. So I'm going to also pay close attention to that too. And then that way I'll get to try to see how much I can absorb of more information related to the mysterious Lee Shapiro. I think he called them spell cards, and I think he referred to those as interpretive wells, something along those lines. And so the fact that these things can apparently summon dark entities, maybe even demons, as what he was describing, that she was stating, that's something else altogether. That's big no-no to my end, but that's essentially what Lee Shapiro's room is. And then that's true about the family. The family apparently wanted nothing to do with what Lee Shapiro was doing afterward. That's the gist that I got from the very same tour guides. They stated that as more information was leaking about her mysterious demise, her unnatural demise, that her family wanted to, I guess, not only not do anything with that, but also tried to make sure that after her death that her name was as clean as possible. Like, they didn't want her to become some kind of mockery, some kind of, I don't know if you could call it like form of display or something like that, which is ironic because now essentially Zach is making it point and front center, not only in the museum, but also within this very episode. And my understanding is that's what the family was totally avoiding. In fact, not only have I read it online, but I think one of the tour guides mentioned it as well, that the family has taken great extent to try to wipe all the negative stuff associated with Lee Shapiro online, meaning that you can do that too. I think it's called REO, or SEO, which is search engine optimization, where you can make sure that even though the information stays there online, it doesn't come up as the very first results whenever, let's say, you try to look up on Bing or you try to look up on Google. You can make other things pop up first, and that either helps, hurts, or protects relevant information of whatever you're trying to do. So here, in this case, the family is trying to do that kind of stuff with the SEOs to ensure that Lee Shapiro's name is saved. In other words, that she's not forever tied to whatever type of demonology or dark stuff that she was working on. And so they wanted to erase that negative stuff from the internet. Not erase it entirely because they don't have that capability, but instead erase it from bringing up some kind of search options. But here he is, in this case, Zach, going through that whole thing, and then essentially bring her out in the open, but not mentioning her name. But those of you, again, that are here listening to this now, that's her name, Lee Shapiro. That is a special treat for you. Another thing you see within that room is you see the pictures before she was in this type of experiment. You see her as a younger woman or younger looking woman, because apparently these summonings and whatever she was doing with this demonology would actually age her as well, like age her quicker than she normally should have aged. But yeah, you see her out and about. She was a very popular socialite. I think she was a real estate agent too. She was someone that was there in the in the hub of whatever type of city she was in, and there she was in those pictures in galas and parties, and there she was with fancy dresses on and so on. And so it's a huge discrepancy between those pictures and obviously what ended up being her last ones there after what happened to her. So crazy, crazy stuff. And then of course you saw the Ouija board. I didn't know that that's hers. I've seen, well, no, I never really saw that before because it's tucked away in the corner, but the fact that that's her own original one just made things so creepy. And then it looks like they're going to be messing also with another no-no, which is the Devil's Rocking Chair, trying to do something there as well, some kind of summoning or some other type of reading there of some sort. I don't know about that stuff. That stuff is creepy. I've seen that chair only once out of the 3 times that I was there at the museum, and that's because it was only introduced after that one time. It was like a late purchase. This is a chair that he ended up purchasing sometime last year, and no sooner did he did that than he actually put it out on display. And so there's a great backstory. That's the first time I actually saw the backstory there right here on this episode. When I was there, I got to see the chair in person, but unfortunately the angle that I was in was right when the door opens. To see the chair, it blocked my view, so I had to like lean over to my right to try to peek over whatever door it was that keeps the chair hidden originally. And I tried my best to see it, but I only got to see a few glimpses, like only a couple of seconds. You're only in that room like really short time. I think it's actually the shortest time that I've ever been within any of the rooms. So it makes it seem like the tour guides or Zach or whomever is making certain that there's no, how should I put it, no chance at all that this chair is going to do anything bad to anyone out there. They do show clips, though, of people having fainting spells as well involving this chair. So it's there. I don't know why the chair is haunted. Like specifically, like why a chair? Like why would a cabinet be haunted? Why would a lamp be haunted? Like, so in other words, why a chair? But here it looks like they're going to at least try something else for it. So what a great way to start this particular segment when it comes to episode 3. So let's go ahead, let's watch segment 2 together, and I'll see you back here in about maybe 15-20 seconds. All right, everybody, thank you. See you soon. All right, everyone, welcome back. Let's talk about segment 2 when it comes to this new episode from Ghost Adventures. It looks like it was actually more build-up rather than actual experiments in this case, but still, it was very riveting to see a lot of the information presented. First off, that food segment was alright. Like, I thought it was a little corny, but I guess that's the kind of camaraderie that they have between each other. But now back to the Shapiro room, LEE SHAPIRO'S room, and that's when they went in and they tried to do something, like when it comes to that recorder. By the way, the tour guide that I was with last time stated there's a loop. Like when you walk in that room during a regular tour, there's this loop of audio that plays, which is like a recreation. It's a recreation of the recording that whatever LEE Shapiro was doing, it would come through. It would sound like something straight out of Silent Hill to give you a sense of what it sounded like. But this is a loop that just constantly plays, and so it's there all the time while the tours are going on there at the museum. But the tour guide stated that somewhere along the way, something messed with the actual recording, like it decided to change the recording just ever so slightly, like there's a glitch associated with it now. And she said that nobody has touched that recording, nobody has altered it. Why would they? It would just be playing constantly on its own as part of the museum exhibit. But now, whenever it plays with that glitch. And so they decided to leave it there as is to showcase proof that whatever it was that was messing around with that room decided to also mess around with that recording. So that was really neat stuff. Next time you go there into that room as part of the exhibit, pay close attention to that recording, and you can hear that glitch too. And then of course there was Zach with the EMF spikes that he was referring to as far as those input wells that he was scanning. And then there was that growl, that sound that was played as they were trying to examine other things within that room. That was a pretty creepy growl. I mean, I have to mention that. That was something that just stands out. I've heard of a growl myself whenever I was in a manor there in Bel Air, Texas. It didn't really scare me. It just more like fascinated me. And I remember zooming in with my camera. Unfortunately, my camera captured zilch, nothing when it came to that growl. Yet I distinctly heard it. I heard that growl coming from my right hand side when I was by myself up in that mansion, up on the very top attic. So in this case, they ran away, and I'm wondering, like, if I was there at the museum and I heard a growl, would I run away or would I actually be more fascinated with it? It depends. I guess we'll have to see. But they gave more information when it came to LEE Shapirō's, the way she communicated, and apparently doing so by talking into other dimensions. It reminded me right away of that eerie movie, Event Horizon, that cult classic, that beautiful, beautiful horror movie that's been out for a good maybe 20 years or so, and how that one in the ship went to other dimensions. Maybe that's what LEE Shapiro was doing here too. Like, maybe she wasn't traveling into the other dimensions, but in turn, she was having something else come out from those other dimensions. Remember how in the movie it said a dimension from hell, like something there that was a universe equivalent to what our version or our thinking of hell is. So maybe that's what's happening here with LEE Shapiro and the way she was doing things. She inadvertently opened that doorway, and then that's what led to whatever was coming out in that Polaroid coming straight for her. Crazy stuff, really, really creepy stuff, and that's the kind of stuff that I love. And that's why, again, that room fascinates me so much. It is by far the most fascinating room to me in the entire museum. But and then as far as those vibrations, I didn't really hear anything. Like, I think they refer to it as infrasound. I don't know. I don't know about that. It's like an invisible sound. If it's not there, did it happen? You know how you hear that saying, if a tree fell in the woods and nobody was around, did it make a sound? That's the kind of stuff that it brought me back to when I was hearing that. So I'm not real sure about that particular part, but at least there was still a good intro and more stuff with the room, including that Class A growl. Like, that was something that was really, really cool to hear. So, all right, everyone, let's go ahead and let's watch segment 3 together, and I'll see y'all back soon. Alright, everyone, welcome back. In this case, from segment 3 of the Zach Baggins Haunted Museum Special Edition videos there in the quarantine. This one also seemed more like a filler segment, not really knee deep into the experiments just yet. They still haven't really set them, well, they've set them up, but they haven't really turned things on just yet, but still some riveting stuff that we could talk about. And in this case, they actually went to specifically how LEE Shapirō's equipment worked. So more of the input device. That's the stuff that really fascinated me. The idea that you could have something like a hole, like a giant hole, and as long as you put anything in that hole, then somehow, some way, whatever is in that hole will be interpreted as frequencies through the rest of the device. Fascinating stuff. I mean, obviously dangerous, but still fascinating to me, because the idea that, let's say, you could put a book in there and somehow that book, its physical content, its words, whatever is in that book is going to be then transposed, for lack of a better word, into those specific frequencies, whatever those are. Or maybe you could put a photograph in there, or maybe you could do like she put, like you could put a piece of paper that contained some of that weird writing that was showcased in some of the earlier parts of the episode. So the idea that that kind of stuff is there, it's fascinating. It's weird. Like, it shouldn't work, but apparently it was working for her, obviously with deadly results. And then now they're going to try to do that again when they turn that equipment on. So crazy stuff. Again, not stuff that I would really do myself, but at least it's making for some good material there for the episode. And then there's Zach once again getting touched by whatever he was, I guess, tapping his shoulder there within the museum. I've never had anything happen to me. I don't recall any of the guests that I saw on the 3 tours like stating that they were tapped on the shoulder or touched anywhere else. But the guides do state that people have been touched. They usually get touched, especially the women, by their hair, or they'll have like something else, like a light tap on their legs. I think that's another one that stood out. But I have had one of the guests there have to leave because they stated that they just felt so down. Like they felt like something. I don't know. It's weird the way he stated. Like they felt like they were having a deep pressure, a deep depression. I'm sorry, within them all of a sudden when they were walking in a certain part of a room, and this depression was getting to them, and so they had to leave. That's the closest that I saw. He also keeps pointing out that notarized letter. I'll mention this. The content of a notarized letter doesn't make it true. Like just because it's notarized doesn't mean it's 100% true. You could have practically anything be a notary, like a notarized letter. Like somebody could state they came from Mars and they could have it notarized. What the true intention of a notarized letter is that the signature is valid. Like whoever is signing on it, that's basically what it's for. That's why it's being notarized. That's because that person is truly there, whoever the notary saw in front of them, and they're the ones that are witnessing that signature. But he kind of keeps making it seem like the fact that it's notarized means that it's true, but it's not the case and that kind of stuff. But they were talking again about LEE Shapiro and what she was doing. Was she calling upon demons? Was she making some kind of deal with the devil? That was fascinating stuff whenever he was stating that. I think that was Billy or I forgot Jay. No, I can't remember who it was. But yeah, they were stating that yeah, there might be a chance that Lee was trying to make something with a communication, that she was bringing up something else, maybe in the form of a bargain. I don't know. Was she something like? Was there something wrong with her? Was she sick? Was she near dying at the time? Was she trying to prolong her life? Was she trying to gain immortality? Who knows? But that's the interesting kind of angle that they went into. But it was fascinating, more fascinating for me to see those original notes and the original books there within the devices. I'm going to look for that next time too when I'm there at the museum. If I see those again within the input wells, then I know that those are her original devices, the real deal. Like those are the actual books and the actual writings that are within it. I've seen them there behind the glass display, but not this time. Like I didn't really pay too much attention to the input wells from before, but now I will because of what I know on it. And then I like the part where they were doing the elaborate setup and they pointed out how it worked. I'm a big audio geek myself. I'm definitely someone that loves enjoying good equipment, and so to see how that stuff works, like seeing how there's one set of input going into another output and then output going to another input, and then you had the cable split, and then they went to, I guess you call it that Ovulus 5 there, and then it was surrounded by these two rods or these two holes that he was placing over another device. Fascinating stuff. That's the kind of stuff. I think he called it a paranormal puck as well. So that's the kind of stuff that's just also very interesting to me too. And so it reminded me of that like the older cartoons, the Bugs Bunny ones, where it would be ear to ear chains. Like you would have those cups that were there, those cans that you would put to one ear and then be connected to a chain of other cups that were connected to other ears. And so that's how things were communicated in those cartoons. But overall, pretty good episode. I'm just wondering again how those input wells work. The idea that you could have something physical, like in this case the notepad that I'm using for this episode as I'm jotting down notes, you could put that within one of those input wells, and somehow those very notes that I just wrote are going to be placed into those frequencies. Very interesting stuff. So alright everybody, let's go ahead and let's watch segment 4 together, and I'll see y'all here soon. Alright everyone, welcome back from segment 4 here in the Quarantine Summoning Experiments episode. It looks like with this one, now they're knee-deep fully in the experiments, in the actual summonings that they were talking about at the beginning of the episode. So it started off with Zach here seeing more of those spikes within that equipment that he was using. I don't know what those millijoules means, so I don't know if what the difference is between, let's say, it reaching a quarter or half or maybe a third of the way. I imagine that it means that there's obviously like more of a presence, but I wish they would have explained further like how the importance of it spiking so high. And then also, to me, the biggest standout equipment was that thing that they used that spelled out the words. So if they would ask a question then it would respond with a single word. Like when he said hello, and then when Billy said hello, then now it showcased the word malevolent right off the bat. So that was really fascinating stuff for me too. Very eerie when I saw that, and then also further continued very intelligent responses such as like object, which is in that I immediately got it that that this thing was objecting to whatever these guys were doing, and instead of, let's say, object, like pointing out an object in front of them, no, it was actually just stating to them that they didn't want whatever these entities were. They didn't want these guys doing what they were doing in terms of those experiments. So great stuff on that. And then the word threat, maybe that immediately came to me like they were issuing a threat. Like these entities were issuing a verbal threat to these guys for doing that kind of stuff. Or it could have been interpreted as another way. It could have been where they stating that whatever they're doing is going to be a threat to them as opposed to the entities causing this threat. Instead, it's going to be something else creating a threat to them. Great stuff, great evidence. I like that stuff more than, let's say, that other device that Zach was using. I forgot what he was calling it, but it was something that measured the temperature drop within that grid, within that reddish grid that looked like it was straight out of Resident Evil. Remember that in the first movie? How there was that giant laser grid? That's what it looked like to me whenever it was there, but it seemed like it was a big setup for a small payoff because that stuff, whatever that cold mist was, obviously remains obscene, but because you can't see it, the impact isn't there. All you got to see was just a tiny display that showcased those lights turning on, indicating cold front, like something was moving right in front of that area. But the fact that he was stating that there's that chair and there's the holy water, and then he went with that pretty powerful segment when it was talking about all those sentences involving Ed and Lorraine Warren and about their presence being there, the objects they used, the cassette that he brought out, another great thing from that particular segment because that was the original audio recording of the actual possession. It makes me interested to want to hear what that was after. I might have to look it up later on YouTube, see if somebody actually did find the original recording, because unfortunately all that audio would have been even better if it wasn't so bleeped out. Obviously all you heard was just a bunch of bleeps because of, no doubt, the bad words or other type of vulgar stuff that whatever was from that boy was stating into the recorder. But at least here they were using all that original equipment during Zach's segment to try to do something, like to try to create that effect. And so you saw more of that stuff moving, and then when it jumped back over to Billy's area, there were more intelligent words. Gateway, remember I was mentioning earlier about Event Horizon? There's that actual device that they had within the middle of the ship and how it opened up an accidental gateway to hell. Great callback when it came to my particular point on that earlier. So, did she really open up a gateway? Did she really open up a gateway to hell, whatever that dimension was? And if so, it was in turn telling those guys about the writing. It said the word writing and about her writings. Great stuff. I thought that was far more impactful than so far anything else that they've used, not just in this episode, but in some of the other episodes too. And then they went further into the input and output device. I like how they were testing it in two fronts, especially when it came to Billy and the other guy. Who knows how far they were away? Presumably the other guy's in one part of the country, and then here Billy is in Las Vegas. But here you have both locations, separate locations, potentially hundreds of miles away, but this thing, whatever it is that's communicating with them, is communicating at the same time between both areas. Very fascinating stuff, especially when it comes to that input and output stuff. One thing when it jumped back to Zach's area, and he was again showcasing that device that measured the cold front, why not use that other device, that other awesome equipment that he featured in one of the other seasons, one of the earlier seasons? I have no idea which season it was, no idea like what the device was called, but it was a really cool looking device, and the output of it was just amazing, where it looked like it was a vision from a thermal camera, but you got to see anything that changed a certain temperature visually on the camera itself. And there was that great segment within the episode it was featured on where you got to see a purplish mist like go into one room, leave another room, and then enter another room. This was something that was just amazing. I wish they could have used that, and I wish they could use it further, not just here but in other episodes, because that remains some of the best evidence I've ever seen. You physically saw a ghost and it looked like a mist as it moved from one point from one room to another, and then at one time of the episode, I remember that it was going in, and then it stopped, and then it decided to actually move back, and so that was amazing stuff. Why not put it here in this museum? Why not use that equipment? I'm wondering whatever happened to the equipment because it hasn't been featured within anything else. But that's still great stuff that I wish they could have used further. And then it looks like Zach took out once again the SLR or SLS or whatever it's called. I can't remember the name of it, but the one that produces those dancing stick figures, and it looks like he had a hit. So let's go ahead, let's watch segment 5 together, and then I'll see y'all back soon. Alright, everyone, welcome back. We just finished watching segment 5, so let's go ahead and let's talk about that together. Really great segment, especially when it comes to the continued use of that awesome device that Zach has, that SLR or SLS machine, because now that small figure that was captured, is it a child? Is it something else? Is it a demon-like hunched creature? Who knows? But now this thing went from the corner of the room straight into the chair. And not only that, but it seemed like it was having a good time on that chair too. It had its hand on the chair, then it had its arm, like its elbow on the chair, then it seemed to have its leg as well on the chair. Really great stuff, and it stayed there for a good time period. I can see why Zach was getting real excited about it, because here, whatever this thing was obviously looking back at Zach, and it knew that Zach was seeing it through that device, and so there it was, almost like creating a show, like I was almost doing some form of entertainment, which is ironic considering it's Las Vegas, but there it was doing it right on that chair, and then it was just creating all this great evidence, and then boom, it just disappeared right afterwards. So I think that was also some of the greatest evidence yet featured within this series, because of that amazing stuff again happening solely within that chair. There was no chance of it, let's say, happening at any of the other points other than that corner room that there was previous evidence from before. And then there was back over to LEE SHAPIRO'S room, there were that thump. That was really great to hear that, because now you got to see something was wanting them out. It was telling them earlier to get out. It was issuing a threat. And then when that didn't happen, now this thing was just basically telling Billy to get out of there with a thump. And it was right there, right close to him. Like it was literally right next to the very wall that was holding up the drawers, I'm sorry, that the devices were on. It was right on that wall itself, and then it was right by him. So great stuff. And then there was that Ouija board that looks like Aaron and Billy were using. I'm still a big no on that part. There's always a chance too, when I was seeing some of the other segments, like a minute later, like when they were jumping back and forth, and then they went back, and then there they were spelling out J. I read that there's some part of a Ouija board where it's more self-controlled by the user. Like, in other words, if you want to spell something out, you can make the stuff do it on your own subconsciously. And but still, there's also the chance that there's a dark thing there. So I don't know about the Ouija board stuff. It seems like it's more evidence based on user mindset rather than, let's say, real physical evidence, but we shall see. But then Zach took out the chair and he actually sat in it. I don't recall him ever actually doing that before. I've seen the chair featured on multiple episodes, and then also within other segments, like in other parts of other TV shows, but I think this is the first time I've ever seen him sit on the chair. And so the idea that there's a real life demon that sat on that chair, one that only the possessed boy, and then Lorraine saw, that creeped me out, because who knows? Like, I don't know if that's really true 100%, but the idea that if there was a demon and it was on that chair, then that's the physical, actual chair that Zach was sitting on. And so who knows what remnants were there too, and of course he had to just walk out. But then back to the segment involving Billy within Lee Shapiro's room, there was more thumping. There was that thump that just happened not just once but twice. This time it looks like it was in between that wall separating both rooms, and they were doing the Ouija board actually in Lee Shapiro's room involving the photographs. And so the Ouija board and Billy and then Aaron, I'm sorry, not Jay and Aaron were within that room, and then Billy was in the other part of Lee Shapiro's room, the one involving the equipment. So she has two rooms, remember. One is involving the photographs, and the other one is involving the equipment. And so it looks like that noise actually came right in the middle of it. Zach was stating that there's a chance it was coming from the Demon House room. He may be right, because if you know the layout of the museum like I do by now, the room that they're in, Lee Shapiro's photograph room and then Lee Shapiro's equipment room, right next door to it, literally next door, like the next door next to it, inches away, is the room that leads over to the Demon House room. It's actually the very last room that you see within the entire museum. It's always been that way. It's always been the last room. And so whenever you take the tour, you see Lee Shapiro's equipment room and Lee Shapiro's photo room towards the end. And so if something was truly making that noise, then it could have been coming from the Demon House. But considering the layout and considering the logistics of it, I still think that it was right in between the wall that was separating both of Lee Shapiro's rooms. And that would have been really spooky, because here you have something right in the middle of that wall that shouldn't be there. Obviously, there's nothing physical like a person or someone else between that wall because it's too skinny, but it was creating those multiple bangs. It was telling them to pretty much get the hell out when it comes to their presence there. And then if that didn't work, then there was more of that great evidence involving the communication, that device that was stating traveling demon, and then you got to hear a woman's voice. I immediately wondered, is this Lee Shapiro? Is that her voice? Did she finally have a way to contact back from wherever she was? Why do I get the picture that she's trapped somewhere? Like in her case, she was taken after she died. She was taken by whatever those dark forces were, and then now she's trapped in that universe or that dimension that was communicating with her from before, and then here she is trying to manifest herself to save other people. Why did I get that instant impression when I was watching the episode? I'm wondering how much true of that really is. But still, Ouija boards kind of freaked me out whenever they were doing that within that room, and it's something that, just in case, I still don't advise at all. I'm never going to do them. Never, absolutely at all. But it was still, at least the evidence involving the thumping while they were doing that Ouija board kind of showcases that something else, they don't want them doing that too. So, alright everyone, let's go ahead and let's watch the final segment together, and then that'll be a great way to come back here, talk about that segment, and then wrap up this episode. Alright everybody, see y'all soon. Alright everyone, welcome back. In this case we saw segment 6, final segment of episode 3 of the special edition quarantine episode. A great way to send off this segment. Lots of powerful stuff to talk about here. So let's go ahead and let's start. Right off the bat, I wanted to mention this. When they started off the segment there in the photograph room of Lee Shapiro, you got to see, if you look real closely, you'll see some photographs there on the walls. That's actually photographs of her and some of the other people that she was around back when she was a socialite. You got to see the photographs, but you got to see also that there was like these bars covering their eyes to help hide their identity. But in some of those photographs, you got to see Lee Shapiro herself when she was back then a popular socialite. So really interesting. When you watch that segment again, take a look at those particular pictures, and then you may get to see her there. And then it looks like everyone was having back problems. So whatever was attacking them seemed to particularly like having poking stuff. In other words, having electrocution stuff there on their backs. I don't know why it was focusing on their backs. Maybe it was just enjoying it. But either way, though, it was causing those back problems. Except for that other guy who had that thing that he was mentioning, that sensation there on the right side of his head. So that was pretty fascinating stuff. But then, boom, big evidence that pointed out, whenever he asked who is there, it pointed out to two capital letters, one on Billy's end and one on the other guy's end, and that proved that that is Lee. That is Lee Shapiro. I immediately got that because, of course, I knew her name. I've been there 3 times. I memorized her name from that exhibit. I still don't know why they can't mention it. Like, is it the family that's doing something? Is it something else involving them, like in this case, Zach, trying to protect her identity altogether? I don't know. But it is Lee Shapiro. So when I saw that, I was stunned because right off the bat, hearing the two L's, not just in that room, but far away in the other guy's place, both of those happening at the same time on two separate equipments, and said the capital L, that immediately told me that yes, that was Lee Shapiro that was communicating with them. Eerie stuff. Same thing too when it was stating about the Ouija board, whenever Aaron and Jay were talking about questioning, like, what did they want the intentions on it, and it stated die, and then it wanted them to die by stating the word you. That's the eerie stuff that I was mentioning earlier about Ouija boards. If it truly is user self-controlled, then that's not bad, but in this case, if it truly is something else that's communicating with them, that's not good. And then that clown that's there, I'm going to look out for that clown next time, the one that moved on its own. It made it seem like it was motion censored, like, in other words, it turns on whenever people walk by, that way it freaks them out whenever that happens, because he didn't point out that, let's say, the electricity was gone from the place, and trying to debunk it at that point, like stating that it could have been electricity accidentally jolting the clown awake and then moving it about. But no, it made it seem like it's more set on a sensor. So something, in other words, went through that area, obviously when nothing was there, and it set off that clown, and then you got to see that other light turn on as well by whatever was moving about that area. I'm going to try to look for that clown again whenever I see it next time. And then, of course, it ended with the big teaser for episode 4. Here it's going to be the Dybbuk box. He finally opens the Dybbuk box. You get to see at the end of that teaser the box open with all of its original contents. Really great stuff. I can't wait to see that particular episode, and of course I'll definitely talk about that here with everyone too. So what do you guys think about episode 3 from the quarantine lockdown special edition videos of Ghost Adventures? I thought it was a really great video. Episode 1 was really good. Episode 2 was not quite as good as episode 1, but it had some moments. But episode 3 definitely picked things up, and so we'll get to see together what'll happen with episode 4. All right, everybody, I'll see y'all soon. Take care.